That's right.
All right. Are we ready?
Okay. All right, so let me call us back to order. First item of business is to read the closed meeting certification motion.
I move that the city council members certify by recorded vote that to the best of each member's knowledge, only public business matters lawfully exempted from the open meeting requirements of the Virginia Freedom of Information Act and identified in the motion convening the closed meeting were heard, discussed, or considered in the closed meeting.
Is there a second?
Second.
Ms. Thomas, did you take the vote, please?
Councilor McGill,
Yes.
Councilor Payne,
Yes.
Councilor Pinkston,
Yes.
Mayor Snook,
Yes?
Vice Mayor Wade,
Yes.
Okay, that motion passes. We'll call the meeting back to order. First of all, my apologies to folks who are a couple minutes late from our closed session because our 4 o'clock session ran a couple minutes late as well. First, having established a quorum, let's begin the business meeting with a moment of silence. Thank you. Proclamations. First, Older Americans Month. And I think it's only fair that since I had other folks read things that are most appropriate to them, that I read this one. Older Americans Month, May 2022. Whereas Charlottesville includes a growing number of older Americans who contribute their strength, wisdom, and experience to our community. And whereas communities benefit when people of all ages, abilities, and backgrounds are welcomed, included, and supported. And whereas Charlottesville recognizes our need to create a community that provides the services and supports that older Americans need to thrive and live independently for as long as possible. And whereas Charlottesville can build an even better community for our older residents by planning programs that encourage independence, by ensuring activities that are responsive to individual needs and preferences, by increasing access to services that support aging in place. Now, therefore, I, Lloyd Snook, Mayor of the City of Charlottesville, on behalf of the City Council, do hereby proclaim May 2022 to be Older Americans Month in the City of Charlottesville. We urge every resident to recognize the contributions of our older citizens to help create an inclusive society and to join efforts to support older Americans' choices about how they age in their communities. Signed and dated this May 2nd, 2022. And Marta Keene, the Java CEO, is going to be providing comments. Is that, I take it that's to be electronically or virtually?
Yes, sir.
There we go.
So thank you so much, Mayor Snook, Vice Mayor Wade, and Councilors McGill, Payne, and Pinkston for recognizing May as Older Americans Month. The theme this year for Older Americans Month is Age My Way. And that is what JABA and the Charlottesville Area Alliance like to support. We're allowing seniors to age in the community. JABA by providing services, and you as a member of the Alliance and AARP Age Friendly Network having a plan that facilitates it so that we know seniors who bring wisdom and richness can continue to stay in the community. According to the most updated livability index from AARP, Charlottesville obtains a score of 64 out of 100. So you're above the mean for the national scores. And I think that speaks well to a foundation, and it offers possibilities for where to go in the future. We know that the number of seniors has decreased. We have about 11% now over 65, and that 25% of the population in general, according to the AARP stats, are in poverty. and housing costs have gone up since 2015. None of these are surprises to you. Being AARP age-friendly members, this year they are providing transportation webinar and housing webinar that your teams will be able to participate in. So hopefully this age-friendly goals will remain a focus to make it a great community for each person to age their way. And thank you for this.
Thank you, Ms. Keene, and thank you so much for all the work that you do on behalf of JABA and folks, shall we say, of a certain age.
Our pleasure.
Are there any additional items for recognition?
Yes, I'd like to say a quick word about the Tom Tom Festival. I just wanted to publicly recognize the Tom Tom Foundation, Paul Byer and his team for the great events that happened, I guess, week before last. I was excited to see the city taking the steps to have the kind of block party and so forth that happened downtown. It was exciting to see the city, I think, coming together. I'm grateful for the work that people in the city manager's office, Sam Sanders, Tito Durrett, the acting chief of police, all of the good collegiality and just working together to make that happen. So I'm grateful for the folks who stuck in there with Tom Tom over the last couple of years. It was their 10th anniversary, and I think it was a great event, and we look forward to more in the future.
I'll just say I went to the community pitch night, which I've often enjoyed, and it was really a lot of fun. And I just think it's a great idea and a great way to energize the community. And that Friday night when we had Tom Tom, we had Fridays After 5 going, we had Dogwood Festival, we had so many things going on. It was really an exciting atmosphere.
And the weather
downtown.
was beautiful.
And the
It
weather
just
was
as
gorgeous.
People were
That's
out.
right.
Yes, it was great.
Yeah. So anyway, thank you to all of those who helped put on Tom Tom, as well as Fridays After 5, as well as the Dogwood Festival.
Yeah, and Paul wanted me to make a point, too, to recognize the hip-hop artists that were there on the Friday night and the work that they did and just to elevate that. So,
Yeah. So it was a good day.
yep.
Next item is the consent agenda. Ms. Thomas, would...
I have an announcement.
Oh, you have announcement. I'm sorry.
That's okay.
I skipped announcements.
That's all right. I was getting...
Announce away.
Mr. Alex Zan is asking for the 2022 My Help List Award winners. Charlottesville, Virginia, the 8th annual Alex Zan Virginia A. Gatewood My Help List contest winners have been chosen. The contest is a writing, thinking, reading activity for students K through 12 in Charlottesville and surrounding counties. Students shared their thoughts on the importance of helping others and 5 things they have or can do to help someone. This year's winners are Lucas Dunaway, 1st grader at Greenbrier Elementary School, Polly Keevil, 5th grader at Village School, Ivy Lechmansky from Burley Middle School, and the Albemarle rowing team. The winners will be awarded a cash prize of $100 at a gathering on Thursday, May 12th at 6:30 p.m. at the Ting Pavilion. All winners, guests, media, and sponsors are invited. Masks are optional.
Thank you. Now, consent agenda. Ms. Thomas?
Consent agenda. 3 minutes. March 17th, budget work session. March 23rd, budget public forum. March 31st, budget work session. April 1 and 2, council retreat. 4, ordinance. Amending and reordaining Chapter 9, elections, Section 9-31, Central Absentee Voter District, to change the location of the Central Absentee Voter Precinct from City Hall to City Space. Second reading. 5, ordinance. Amending the Friendship Court Phase 1 loan agreement, second reading. 6, resolution appropriating additional funding from the Virginia Department of Social Services for the VIEW program, $38,025, first of 2 readings. 7, resolution appropriating funding from the Virginia Department of Social Services for Child Abuse Prevention Month, $1,000, first of 2 readings. 8, resolution approving a special use permit at 209 Maury Avenue, one reading.
Okay, so we will now take public comment regarding items on the consent agenda that were just read by the clerk. Each speaker will have up to 3 minutes. In the Zoom webinar, you can select the raise hand option to be placed in the speaker queue. If you have joined by phone and wish to speak on the consent agenda, you may press *9. We will alternate in-person and virtual speakers. And I just want to emphasize again, if you were signing up, if you want to talk about other things, there will be another opportunity in just a few minutes. This is only to speak about the 6 items that were just read. Are there any speakers who wish to address the consent agenda items? Anybody here? Nobody here. Do we have anybody online who wishes to speak on the consent agenda?
Mayor Snook, I see no raised hands at this moment.
All right. Is there a motion to approve the consent agenda?
Move for approval.
Okay.
Second.
Any further questions or comments from council? Ms. Thomas, you take the vote, please.
Counselor McGill?
Yes.
Counselor Payne?
Yes.
Counselor Pinkston?
Yes.
Mayor Snook?
Yes.
Vice Mayor Wade?
Yes.
Okay, the motion passes 5-0 to adopt the consent agenda. Next item on the agenda is to have an update from the city manager's office. The report from the city manager's office was included in the agenda packet.
Couple of
Mr.
items,
Rogers,
Mr. Mayor,
okay.
Council. Mayor Snook, working with UVA law students, has identified a path to provide public grants to low and moderate income homeowners within the city without being constrained by the limits of the city charter, section 50-7. To implement this alternative approach, the City Council will need to retool the CHAP program and transform it into a public assistance grant that can help middle-class persons in the low and middle income range at or below the 50% AMI. The Commissioner of Revenue, the Treasurer, the Director of Social Services, and the Budget Director are working on details of a proposed program update. They expect to be in a position to place a proposal on your May 16th agenda for action. They are in attendance if you have any questions for Mr. Divers or the Treasurer. But we'll be back on the 16th with the proposal.
All right.
Okay. Also, in February 2022, my deputy managers attended the winter conference of the Virginia Local Government Management Association. One of the presentations focused on collective bargaining, and the information presented to us that was that only the governing bodies of counties, cities, and towns have been given authority to implement collective bargaining. Since elected school boards are a separate type of governing body, we were told that the 2020 legislative changes do not apply to elected school boards. And this is something I've discussed with the Chancellor, and we're still following up on that. Also, with respect to collective bargaining, we will we will interview proposers probably next week. We received 2 proposals for a consultant to perform that service, and we expect to be in contract before the end of the month, so that we can get working on shaping an ordinance that we hope to bring to you early summer.
All right.
On that. And with respect to other items, last week we had extensive discussion at the council on both the bus stop at Crescent Hall and on the CBDG program. Sam Saunders has worked this week on both those issues because we recognize the importance of them. Sam, you want to highlight the efforts this week?
Yeah, I would like to just make sure that the community hears a little bit more of the discussion, and we know that councilors, you received a written report. I just want to make sure that the public hears it as well. In regards to Crescent Hall specifically, the bus stop move has been paused at this time. I've already initiated meetings with both CRHA and FAR leadership, and that is just to help begin to wrap our arms around, are there any potential options? And if so, how will we go about making sure that people are aware of what those options are? I've also started some conversations with Jaunt because of hearing the various complaints about their service. I wanted to make sure that I understood a little bit more about what the challenges are. And because the city has a relationship with Jaunt where we're paying them for service, we want to make sure that that service is meeting the needs of our residents. In addition to that, CATA is also looking at options just to see what cadre of variations that we can bring forward to you. But before we do any of that, we're going to make sure that we take this back to the residents of Crescent Halls and lay out for them various options and let them weigh in on what it is that is available in the way of options before we actually move back. The other thing I wanted to just go ahead and confirm is that there was some concern that if there was a change made, that it could delay anything happening or of the schedule at Crescent Halls. That concern has been eliminated. We've made sure that as it relates to the bus stop, if a change were to occur, that would be on CAT and not on CRHA, so that everything can continue and the residents can return as scheduled. So that's the main thing on Crescent Halls. The other thing that I wanted to highlight was in regards to the conversations about home and CDBG. There are a number of things that we need to continue to work on, and staff is working on that right now to get clarity and a little more details to make sure that we can come back to the public and lay things out for not only council, but for them as well, as to how we will tackle the citizen engagement plan, the task force function and representation, and making sure that we do all of that within the national objectives identified by HUD. So those things will be coming back to you. We're going to organize a little bit more on what the various steps are, what changes need to be made, what schedule we need to follow, and make it as crystal clear as we possibly can. So that would be what I have for you as an update.
Okay. Ashley, did you have a couple of points you wanted to raise from your report?
Yes, sir. Specifically wanted to just make sure that the community knows that the Office of Equity and Inclusion is hosting a virtual groundwater session in June. This session is focused currently on staff, including staff at our libraries. It's open to our redevelopment and housing authority staff, as well as the CPMT. And groundwater is a informational approach to thinking about systemic racism. We are considering holding a second one at some time, and if we did, there would be spaces open to the community. In addition, from our treasurer, the real estate and personal property tax bills are being mailed this week. Beginning with this payment cycle, the treasurer's office has eliminated the e-check fee for tax payments made on their new payment website. So it offers a free payment option for taxpayers who wish to pay electronically. They also are working with the State Department to resume offering passport applications beginning July 1st of this year. In our Office of Economic Development, they continue to implement the Recovery Roadmap, a plan for business recovery in Charlottesville with an additional round of BRCE grants for small businesses. The Building Resilience Among Charlottesville Entrepreneurs helps businesses gain resilience and adapt in response to the threat of the current business environment. An additional 51 grants were delivered to city-based businesses and organizations during this round of funding, and each $2,500 grant was targeted to a business that demonstrated the ability to adapt to the challenges brought on by the pandemic. The Minority Business Program has recently launched another Go Startup cohort, and Go Startup is a free entry-level program for entrepreneurs who want to start their own businesses. The participants will have an opportunity to test a business concept through hands-on project development and management skills in a low-risk environment. And finally, please note that this week, May 1st through 7th, is National Small Business Week, so please take some time to appreciate all the small businesses that are in your life. Finally, with our Department of Human Services, just wanted to make sure the community knew that the biennial Virginia Juvenile Crime Control Act funding contract has been completed and submitted in partnership with the Charlottesville and Albemarle CPMT chairs, the 16th District Court Services Unit, and local juvenile judges. The new proposal includes over $65,000 of funding for prevention, programming, and services to youth not currently involved in the juvenile system, so more youth have access to supports towards success. And finally, the West Haven Nursing Clinic Coordinator will be stepping down from her position as of July 1st, 2022. Recruitment for that position should open in the coming weeks, and it's the sincere commitment of the city to ensure a smooth transition, and we will incorporate input from residents and partners in the selection process.
Thank you, Ashley. And Council, I also like to report that last week we had a very robust discussion with the neighborhood associations. They had submitted questions in advance. We responded in advance of the meeting and had about a 2-hour dialogue on a number of issues that were on their mind, and we look forward to those continuing dialogue into the summer and to the next quarter. We will circulate the questions and the answers to you so that you're informed of what we discussed. And that's it. Thank you.
Thank you. And Mr. Rogers, let me just say that I really appreciate the fact that you and your staff have put together a detailed, like 20, 30-page compendium of what's going on in city government, including department by department, what's happening. First of all, because it's just very informative. Second, because it is the first time that I've been able to look at something and say, if somebody wants to know what's going on in city government, they should go look at the agenda and the packet for this meeting, because you will see pages upon pages of what the city government has been up to. And I think that people too often think that whatever happens is happening behind a screen and nobody's seeing it and we don't know what it is. Here's an opportunity for folks to really see what's happening and that there is in fact progress being made on some important things, and that's great.
Thank you.
Any other comments in response to the city manager's report? In that case, it's time to move on to community matters. We have one pre-registered speaker, leaving 15 slots for additional speakers on community matters. Each speaker will have up to 3 minutes to speak. There will be an additional public comment section at the end of the meeting. So we'll first open the floor to pre-registered speakers, to our one. Others wishing to speak may select the raise hand option in the Zoom webinar to be placed in the speaker queue. If you have joined by phone and wish to speak during community matters, you may press *9. In-person attendees may raise your hands to be recognized. We will alternate virtual speaker, in-house speaker, back and forth. Is our first speaker available?
It looks like it.
I'm looking for the online person first.
Oh,
Amanda Nelson? Okay. Come on up.
that's theirs. The banners.
Good evening. Thank you, Mr. Mayor, Mr. Vice Mayor, and councilors. I am Amanda Nelson. I live on Stribling in Charlottesville, and want to thank you for your time tonight. I have walked with my students at UVA, from UVA, with many other students here tonight, and Kendall, Brooke, Maddie, and Dream, and Johnny and I are here to share with you a piece that we think is really important and hope you enjoy. I also have a card. Is it all right if I give one to each of you?
Yeah.
And then it will help inform, thank you, the discussion. Thank you. And, I would like to cede my time to my student, Johnny Lindberg.
Thank you, Professor Nelson. Mr. Mayor and City Council members, I am here with my fellow UVA students enrolled in Right Climate, Art and Engagement, a class focused on environmental engagement and awareness through public art. We represent some 600 members of our beloved community who share concerns about the lack of action surrounding the climate crisis. The mural we hold depicts a Charlottesville landscape against a backdrop of the average temperature anomalies between 1880 and 2022. From the blue at the left to a shocking red at the right, our mural visibly depicts the warming of our climate. On the other side, each postcard, individually sewn together, expresses a community's members' feelings towards the climate crisis, a place they care greatly about, and our community members express feelings of anger, fear, anxiety, frustration, and sadness. But above all, they express the need for change. Council members, we ask you use your position and influence to propose and support a strong climate action policy to reduce our carbon footprint, to strengthen our collective resilience. We need a bold new climate action plan for the city that centers on climate justice, resilience, and regeneration. Now is the time to act. We can lead a way towards a more equitable, sustainable future for all. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. That is stark to see it over a course of time. What was the year?
1880 on the left, and you can see it gradually becomes much redder towards the right.
Yeah.
And that's where we are now in 2022.
I'm curious, the sort of orangey spot in the middle, roughly when was that?
So starting with 1880, this is where we're getting around like the age of industrialization. We're getting cars and all sort of polluting machinery and factory farming, and yes.
The 1940-ish,
Yeah.
probably in the middle there. Okay, neat.
Thank you.
Great concept.
So what are y'all planning to do? Are you gonna hang it up? But what school is this class in?
University of Virginia.
Yeah, I mean, what department?
Oh, this is
it planning
this
or?
is the environmental thought and practice class. Yeah, it's an interesting class. It's a combination of art and environmental science. But yeah, any more questions?
Thank
Great.
you.
Thank you all very much.
Yes.
Okay. Do we have anybody online at this point, Mr. Dillhunt?
Mayor Snook, I see no raised hands at this time.
All right, is there anyone else here who would like to speak in the Community Matters time? Seeing no further interest, that's our final speaker for Community Matters. And so let's move on to our one business item, the special use permit at 207 14th Street Northwest. Mr. O'Connell?
That's
Ah.
Okay. So this special use permit request is from William Chapman, who is applicant and contract purchaser. He is requesting a special use permit to allow for a hotel use on the subject property at 207 14th Street Northwest. The subject property is currently developed with a 21-unit multifamily condominium use, and the applicant wishes to renovate the existing building to accommodate a 19-unit hotel with one residential apartment. The subject property is currently zoned B1 business. Under the B1 zoning district, hotel uses with 100 or fewer rooms are allowed with an approved special use permit, while multifamily residential units are allowed by right with density up to 21 dwelling units per acre. The current condominium use is legal non-conforming with a DUA of 84, and the conversion from apartments to a hotel would reduce the DUA on site to 4. Surrounding area is a mix of residential apartments, single-family detached dwelling units, and hotel uses, predominantly serving as student housing and lodging for the nearby University of Virginia, along with commercial, retail, and restaurant uses. The staff does find that the proposed use is harmonious with the existing patterns of use within the neighborhood. The recently adopted 2021 future land use map designates the subject property for higher intensity residential. This is described as multi-unit housing with 13 or 4 more units per lot, along with limited ground floor commercial uses with building form and height determined by historic and neighborhood context. Affordability and increased intensity in this district are emphasized to meet affordable housing plan goals. The proposed redevelopment does meet some of the 2021 comprehensive plan's goals regarding sustainable reuse of existing buildings, protecting the existing identity of city neighborhoods, and retaining successful businesses and jobs. The proposed new residential density does not easily fit within the future land use category of higher intensity residential, which is geared towards multifamily apartments and mixed use. The proposed change of use to hotel would also result in a reduction of available rental housing within the city. However, the existing apartment use is non-conforming and located in an area of dense residential apartments geared towards short-term student housing. The subject property currently has 15 off-street parking spaces, which does not meet the current zoning requirement of 21 spaces. The applicant is proposing to remove 6 off-street parking spaces fronting 14th Street and replacing them with a drop-off and loading area, along with valet parking provided by the nearby 14th Street parking garage. And review of the application shows that the applicant can provide the required 20 parking spaces, given our code for allowance for off-street parking space, with an accommodation of the remaining parking spaces plus valet parking. Overall, staff believes that the change of use would be appropriate for a transitional B1 district and would eliminate an existing nonconformity for the established apartment use. They recommended the request for the hotel use could be approved with the following conditions. 1, that the applicant shall submit an amended site plan depicting parking, landscaping, and utility line changes. 2, that automatic fire sprinklers, alarms, and appropriate means of egress be provided within the building in accordance with the applicable requirements of the Virginia Building Code. And 3, that the applicant shall submit a signed lease agreement verifying off-site parking to NDS prior to site plan approval. And the Planning Commission didn't consider this application at their April 12th meeting. They did recommend denial by a vote of 4-2. With that, I'll be happy to take any questions. I believe the applicant is here as well.
Councilors have questions?
Yes, and you may have said this in the content of what you just spoke through, but I wanted to bring up a comment that was in the Planning Commission packet and make sure I am understanding this right. So the developer believes that a by right use would be 15 INN, quotation marks around it, rooms rented nightly and 5 apartments rented for a period of longer than 30 days. However, a pure hotel use is a better reflection of our plan, so we're going through this entitlement process. So I guess that's from the developer. Is the sense from staff that a by right use would allow an inn? I mean, I guess the distinction between an inn and a hotel, I'm not sure exactly what that distinction it amounts to, but does staff feel like that the by right option here, if the developer were to develop it in that way, does fit along the line of an inn? I mean, could the owner do that by choice at this point?
Yes, the applicant submitted a request to the zoning administrator a couple weeks ago asking if he could proceed with an in-use along with several apartments in that building. And I believe the response was that he could, that it would be allowed and it would basically be acceptable under the zoning by right.
Okay, so the choice we're facing here is not really, and y'all help me here if you disagree, but I think that the choice is not doing this versus having affordable housing or housing units. It's allowing this to happen or letting that property become an inn. Am I characterizing that right?
I don't think that would necessarily be guaranteed.
Okay. What would not be guaranteed? That it would be used as an inn or developed as an inn?
Right. I mean, I think there's a lot of factors outside of our control that we don't know in terms of project costs, how it works out financially, given that it's existing housing, if there's not an SUP, the future of the property.
Presumably the developer is here tonight. Could he speak to that at some point, Mr. Mayor?
Sure.
Okay.
Let's first, are there questions we need to ask of the staff before we move on to the from the developer?
At the Planning Commission meeting, I know one of the planning commissioners mentioned that they had been outside property trying to observe it and observed that there appeared to be some folks who were living there who were UVA employees, not students. I assume it's true that the developer or staff have not done a census of this property, so when we say that it's a majority UVA students, that's a reasonable conjecture, but we couldn't say that there are not non-UVA students living in this property.
That's correct. We have not surveyed the residents of the property.
Okay. And the average current rent there, which my understanding there's no subsidy, but the average rent is around $700 a month currently. Is that accurate?
From what I've heard about the research that the applicant has done and planning commissioners did, yes, that is correct.
And what would the median rent be for like similar units of this type in the city? I assume that's in the neighborhood of like 1,200 to 1,300.
It might be a fair assessment, yes. It would probably be dependent on a number of factors. I don't know if I have all of them with me right now.
Okay. And then the final question, you mentioned it, but I just want to confirm. So in our adopted future land use map, this site calls for higher intensity residential.
Mm-hmm.
Correct.
Okay. Thank you.
And I'll just verify, I have known people who have lived there who were not UVA students.
No question.
I guess I'm trying to figure out, and maybe I didn't spend enough time staring at the zoning code. What's the nonconformity here?
The nonconformity is simply the number of dwelling units in the building currently. It's a quarter-acre lot. The DUA is by maximum by right is 24. So it would be a significantly lower amount of dwelling units, which would be allowed by right if this building were constructed today.
Okay, because I was curious because I was just looking at it and saying, okay, B1, you can have multifamily residential in a B1. This is multifamily residential. What's the problem? You're telling me that the problem is simply that it is more dense than we would allow under current ordinance?
Right.
Okay. All right. That's the only clarifying question I have at this point. Would the applicant like to say a few words to us?
Well, thanks for having me. It's Bill Chapman.
Yes, sir.
So the current owner of this property brought it to City Council 10 years ago to turn it back into a hotel. This building was built as a hotel in 1964. It's got some nice period, mid-century modern hotel details on it. I'm not sure when exactly it was converted to apartments, but the current owner was here a decade ago and got approval from council to turn it into a hotel, and I think they were going to add 2 stories to it as well. So I think it was about twice the size of what I'm envisioning. I believe their operating partner backed out, so they never pursued it. My idea is to do 19 hotel rooms in 1 apartment, so it's a mixed-use scheme. I've done 2 hospitality projects in the past, and both times they were a mix of apartments that were furnished and hotel rooms, so I have some experience with that. In this case, I came up with a 19-to-1 ratio just because one of the units here is a lot bigger and has a kitchen, and 19 of them are 290 square feet, so they strike me as hotel rooms. We decided to apply for an SUP for the change of use. We had some community meetings that Mr. O'Connell and I attended. No one else attended the meeting, and we got no feedback in writing from the public. So it seemed sort of non-controversial at that time. The city staff did recommend approval. The Planning Commission at their hearing got into a big discussion about net loss of affordable housing. And there's a big debate about whether this housing was going to be around long. It's kind of in my mind, it's kind of a terminal thing where it needs renovation at some point. And a lot of housing around UVA is like that. It just goes down and downhill until someone buys it and sort of changes it. That's kind of the business I'm in. I had mentioned in my narrative that Mr. Pinkston picked up on that I can start a lodging business here, 15 units by right. And I would have 5 apartments So instead of 19 and 1, it would be 15 and 5. I think that's a little bit of a weirder animal. I'd rather have 19 and 1, but I can do 15 and 5. And I'll do that if I don't get the permit tonight. The city zoning administrator who sent me the zoning determination letter today thinks it should be 15 and 4, ironically, because he says the end use takes up one apartment somehow, maybe because it needs a resident manager. So ironically, he wants to do one less apartment than I was thinking. Anyway, I'm guessing that the planning commission was thinking maybe if they denied it, that the property would sort of stay in the owner's hands, not be renovated, not be changed, and the people would continue living there. The background is that the family that owns it is selling all their property right now around the city. They're not going to be holding on to this one. If I don't buy it, someone else will buy it. And they've been acting accordingly, and one of the tenants has already moved out. 4 of the tenants are moving out this month, and that sort of happens throughout the summer. So the tenants are vacating, preparing for this pending renovation. I didn't do a tax, because I didn't know it was going to be controversial. I didn't do a tax analysis of the project, but I know that's sometimes appropriate for city council. I have this here if you want to see copies of it. The incremental taxes of this change, incremental tax benefit, is going to be about $10,000 a month. The current tax bill on this property is around $32,000, and if I change it to this 19-room hotel, it'll be around $158,000. That's mostly through lodging tax. There's also some food and beverage tax, higher property value, et cetera. $10,000 a month might seem like a small number in the scale of what you all do, but if I did the math correctly, that's the same tax impact as building a $16 million apartment building. So this little quarter-acre site can generate a lot of taxes for the city. And I'd like to think that we could take the $10,000 a month and put it towards affordable housing and not just try to hold on to these 290 square foot unrenovated units, because they can't really stay that way for long. At some point, people need to move out. It needs to be renovated, and the only way I know how to do that is to invest a lot of money, and they're probably not going to be $750 apartments after that. Anyway, I think it's a cool little mid-century modern renovation, historic renovation project. That's the business I'm in. You don't see a lot of that kind of architecture in Charlottesville, and it's a highly walkable site, block from the corner. And I hope you'll support my hotel use. I have the freedom to do as many hotel rooms as appropriate there. It's an incredibly hard thing for the city to police on how many nights a room is rented. That's kind of what's led to the whole Airbnb thing around town. It's like they'd have to subpoena my records to know exactly whether I was using one an apartment or a hotel room or whatever. So I'd rather avoid creating such a strange animal, but it's doable. And if you have any questions, I'm happy to answer.
Mr. Chapman, are you hoping to hold on to this investment for some time, I guess?
Yeah, I'm an owner-operator.
Okay.
I started the Oakhurst Inn. I bought the first buildings there back in 2007. So I've been in the business for a while. Yeah, this will be kind of a sister property to the Oakhurst Inn, which is on the opposite side of the school.
Sure. Yeah, that's a nice property.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's done very well.
Yeah. I don't think I have any other questions for Mr. Chapman. I did have some more questions just about the zoning in general. So currently it's B1, is that right?
Yes, correct.
Okay, and with the new comprehensive plan, this area, to Councilor Payne's point, is going to be medium intensity residential?
We're not sure what the new zoning map would look like.
Okay.
I don't think we have a draft prepared yet.
Okay. Right, it's the future land use, so it's, okay. I guess I'm just trying to get a sense of, to Councilor Payne's point, even if it, excuse me, is medium intensity residential, there's still room in there for buildings and structures like this, right?
I mean, depending on how we craft our specific zoning code.
Yeah.
Okay.
But my interpretation would be that the goal would be residential in that area. That's my interpretation of the land use map and our
Okay.
intention. But obviously, we haven't formally adopted a zoning code yet.
Okay. Got it. Got it. Okay, thank you.
Other questions?
No questions.
No?
So this is just, I guess, kind of for staff. One of the things I look at in these type of scenarios is like, if we didn't approve this, what would happen? And it sounds like it would, you know, Mr. Chapman, what, if you didn't get us approval, can you state again what you think you may do with this site?
I plan to purchase the property, do a historic renovation, and turn it into a mixed-use property that's primarily lodging. So the only difference would be the unit mix between nightly rooms and rooms that need to be rented at least 30 days at a time. And in my previous two projects, I've had a mix of those. I don't want it. I don't want 4. I'd rather have 1 apartment. But it would look and feel the same to the public, I think.
Yeah.
A little bit more tax revenue if we do more hotel rooms, because the longer term stuff's tax exempt.
Thank you.
Other questions?
Not right now.
Thank you, Mr. Chapman.
Thanks.
So, councilors?
I guess some discussion, my thoughts are, I don't think we should limit ourselves to making a decision based on what is being threatened. I certainly think, what can be built by right is their prerogative. I don't think that transitioning away from residential uses would be in the best interest of the city, but certainly that's their prerogative and their right. But I would say, even in that case, having 3 or 4 more additional units is better than nothing. And I think, we got in our affordable housing update several weeks ago an estimate of the dollar amount of subsidy that has to go into each affordable unit. And I think if you look at that number and you look at what the rents in this property are, even with the increased revenue, we wouldn't even be making up that gap in terms of the net loss of units at around $700 a month. And furthermore, I would just say I think that this proposal, my concern is the residents who live there, if they're students, will be pushed out into 10th and Page neighborhood and will take up that housing stock. And for those who live in that property who are not students, will probably be displaced from the entire community, because I don't know if they're going to find $700 a month rent without subsidy. And I think that this project is in opposition to both our adopted future land use map. It's not harmonious with our comprehensive plan, and it's completely against the intention of our affordable housing strategy and the updates we've been making to our comprehensive plan and the goals to have that missing middle housing. I think this is that exact kind of naturally occurring, more affordable missing middle housing. And certainly if their prerogative is to reduce the number of units to either 5 or 4 rather than 1 by right, we can't stop that, but I don't think we should be signaling our support. And I think it is still more beneficial to at least have 5 units rather than 1. And finally, I don't think we should limit ourselves to what we are threatened will happen no matter what.
Yeah, I hear you, Councilor Payne. I don't view it as a threat. I just view it as the counterfactual, and that's how I'm looking at it. So, a person has the ability to do what he or she wants with their property, and in this case, this is what's being proposed as the counterfactual, and I feel like I need to assess that counterfactual, and yeah.
And I would say, I'm not saying it's necessarily what's happening, but I think, bigger picture, I just think, we can be presented with counterfactuals that perhaps lead us to certain decisions.
That's an interesting point.
I can't, personally, my input is I can't in good conscience, while we were looking at such a huge housing crisis, vote to reduce housing stock. I mean, it's whether it's, I mean, I understand it's going to change, no matter what, and, but they will, the way it's, again, it's 1 or 5.
I guess I'm inclined to vote for it because I think that even though, 3 or 4 units or 3 or 4 units, in terms of the overall context of the amount of units that we have in the city and the impact this has, it's not even on the edge. It's not even a rounding error in terms of the available units in the city. And, I think it seems like a solid project. It seems like that is what you want in that area. If you're going to do some development in that area, this is the sort of project to do. Yeah, I'm inclined to vote for it.
I would just say respectfully, it's not a rounding error to a UVA employee making $15 an hour.
A very nice point.
Mr. Wade, any thoughts?
Gosh, yeah, this is a difficult one. At this point, I'm inclined to support it because of the potential economic impact that we can get from that. This and the funding can be used for the housing funds, so that we can have more funds for that. But this is a first reading. I want to just. So I don't quite understand it. I'm still kind of learning the
First
process.
of one reading.
First of one, yeah.
Yeah.
This is the vote.
Or we can defer.
Or we can defer.
No.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay.
I mean, my thoughts on it, first of all, it's important to me, perhaps more than it ought to be, but it's important to me that the comprehensive plan has designated this for multifamily residential. That's something that we're supposed to give weight to. It's not just a throwaway item. It's not just a different color on a map. I'm also conscious of the fact that a special use permit ought to be granted when the city is receiving a real benefit from it. When it offers something that the city doesn't otherwise have, when there's some benefit. And the only benefit that's been suggested is that, well, if we do this, we can have more tax revenue, which is not insignificant. But on the other hand, virtually every decision that we make could come down to tax revenue. Over the last few years, we've had a lot of discussions about affordable housing and about how there are a lot of little projects where there are a couple of affordable housing units here or there. And I remember thinking and listening to then, I guess, Vice Mayor Wes Bellamy saying, in essence, making the same point that others have made tonight, that it may only be 1 or 2 units, but to 1 or 2 families, that's all that matters. And we're not going to solve the affordable housing problem in Charlottesville by only waiting for 150 units at a time. We're going to solve it, if we solve it at all, by as many little things as we can do whenever we can do them. So partly my response to this project is the legalistic response of, for it to be a special use permit, it ought to give the city something that I don't feel we're getting. It may be impossible for it to meet that test, given what's being proposed. I'm inclined to vote against it. I'm not 100% certain about that, but that's kind of where I'm thinking at the moment. So.
Well, if there's not further discussion, I would move to deny the special use permit requested within zoning application number SP 22-00003.
Second.
Is there discussion of that motion? Any further discussion? Ms. Thomas?
Counselor McGill?
Yes, I vote to deny.
Yes.
Counselor Payne?
Yes.
Counselor Pinkston?
No.
Mayor Snook?
Yes.
Vice Mayor Wade?
No.
The motion passes 3-2 to deny. Thank you, Mr. Chapman. There are no items for general business discussion at this point. Any other business items for consideration? Councilors have any questions for the city manager to follow up on?
Just one for me. You had mentioned it, but I'm curious to get another update about timeline about collective bargaining, just because I know I've been getting a lot of questions in the community, and you said, was it late summer as a goal?
We will have, we expect to award the contract before the end of the month, and then with the consultant, craft an ordinance that we hope to bring to you maybe late summer.
Okay. Thank you.
All right?
And what did you mention, Mr. Rogers, about the school board? I didn't quite understand that.
Well, it's the question of whether the state law permitting collective bargaining that applied to cities, towns, and counties is applicable to school boards. It did not specifically mention elected school boards. And I think that this bears some further discussion with the superintendent, because in our conversation, he thinks that they may move forward with something, and I just want to make sure that we're in sync, and whether they are under an ordinance that is adopted by the council, then they need to wait on us.
Yeah.
I see.
Right.
Since school boards don't have the authority to adopt an ordinance.
So, I mean,
Right.
I'm sorry, sir, the larger picture, are you saying that the teachers would then have to come to city council instead of the school board?
Now, the school board would, we would define in the ordinance how all of that
Yeah.
would play out. I think, I mean, the school board is still the approving authority,
I understand.
but it would be in accordance with an ordinance defined by this council.
Yeah.
They would still have to do their bargaining with the school board.
Right, right.
Yeah, okay. So, we're now at the final speaking opportunity for members of the public. I see a member of the public. You have up to 3 minutes.
Thank you.
Gina's already wrapping up here.
Sorry, I'm listening, I promise.
Well, I just wanted to talk about the item that you all just denied. I think that was good idea. Every unit does count. I've run the housing authority in Charlottesville. I'm telling you, we need every unit that's on the market, plus thousands of more units. So taking off units does not get us to that end goal of making sure that everyone that works in Charlottesville has a house that they can afford in Charlottesville. And second thing, The rent on a 300 square foot unit can be up to $1,500. Check 600 West Main. Thank you.
Jeez.
Yeah.
Thank you. So I don't see any other members of the public here. Is there anybody online who would like to speak to us?
Yes, Mayor Snook, we have one raised hand at the moment, James Groves.
All right, Mr. Groves, you have 3 minutes.
Good evening. Are you able to hear me?
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah. So I appreciated Amanda Nelson's brief presentation to you earlier. Thought it was really nice. I actually heard about that just yesterday when I was down at Live Arts for an event. And I know you all were quite appreciative of what she and her students presented to you there. After she made her presentation, you commented about how the interim city manager had given you a nice report of activities done by the different departments, all the activities. And so I hesitated to make a comment earlier because I wanted to go and take a look at that, particularly in regards to sustainability action by the city. And so I went down and I looked at, environmental sustainability, and there certainly are a number of items there that have been acted upon in the last number of weeks, but they're kind of all just reports. There's adding pages to the website, okay, getting surveys out, that's good. Generating an annual report on energy and water performance. Some technical audits are underway, but there's no actual action on climate change. And over 6 months ago, one of you reached out to me in email and asked for some suggestions on low-hanging fruit. And I gave a couple suggestions. I also gave those same suggestions 2 weeks ago. And it is that the city stop subsidizing fossil fuels. And that means getting rid of paying for free gas lines and stop incentivizing people, giving people money to install gas water heaters in the city. So I just find it ironic that you're very appreciative of the beautiful art. And I think what she and her students have done is wonderful. And it was all feel good there earlier today. But at the end of the day, we have to do something. And I've given you, over the last 6 months, a couple of low-hanging fruit suggestions. And particularly when I sent it, not only said it, but sent it to you 2 weeks ago, I got radio silence. So I have to say I'm a bit skeptical. You nod your head and say we need to do the right thing. And month after month, nothing happens. So I really would love for you to get busy and do the right thing and do it now. The clock's ticking on climate change. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Groves. Do we have anyone else?
Mayor Snook, I see no additional raised hands. Oh, we have Don Gathers, who just raised his hand. Don, you are on with council.
For the vote that you just had. I'm not going to say a whole lot. I'm just going to wait for the personal property taxes to come out, and then I'm certain that I'll have some comments, especially if they are raised to the projections that I've been hearing so far. So just expect me back. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Gathers. Anybody else?
There are no additional hands.
Okay, so there being nothing further to be done, we're adjourned. Thank you all.